I'll never forget the night I realized everything was a lie. It wasn't the kind of revelation that hit me like a ton of bricks, nor was it a loud argument that blew everything up in an instant. No, this one was quiet. It started with a small, seemingly innocent moment, something that wouldn't even have raised an eyebrow for most people. But for me, it was the beginning of the end. It was a Thursday night, and I was awake for no reason at all. That's how things often happen in the middle of the night, right? You just wake up and can't seem to fall back asleep. I was lying there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, the sound of the old clock ticking in the background. She wasn't in bed with me, and she wasn't in the living room. I couldn't hear her typing on her computer or the soft hum of the TV like usual. It felt strange. I got up, rubbed my eyes, and checked the time. 2:19 a.m. I decided to send her a quick message. It wasn't like I was concerned, but something about the silence made me uneasy. A strange, creeping feeling that I couldn't shake. "Are you still working?" I typed. I didn't expect an immediate response. In fact, I half expected her to say something like, "Yeah, finishing up a few things." She'd been working late a lot lately, always saying it was some deadline, some new client, some new project. But something about the last few days felt different. She'd been distant, avoiding eye contact when we spoke, a little too busy for me. The reply came in less than a minute, a quick response that didn't help calm my nerves. "Yes, very busy. I'll be back in the morning." There it was. The words I had seen too many times in the past month. And the more I saw them, the less they made sense. "I'll be back in the morning." Why was she always so vague about when she'd be home? Why was she always working? I didn't even think about it. I just typed back, "I know about your work. Hope it's worth it." I didn't feel guilty or irrational. In fact, I felt oddly calm, as if this was a moment I'd been waiting for, the moment I finally got some kind of answer. But then nothing. No reply. I sat there, staring at my phone, feeling the cold weight of the silence press against me. I waited for what felt like forever. I checked the clock again. 2:27 a.m. I stood up, walked over to the window, and stared out into the quiet street. The moonlight was soft, casting long shadows on the ground. Everything was still, except for the distant sound of a car passing by. Then I heard something strange. It wasn't loud, just a soft sound that was out of place in the stillness of the night. A knock. A knock on the door. I froze. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then it came again. A light knock, almost hesitant. No one ever knocked like that at this hour. And the sound of the knock itself felt wrong. Off, somehow. It wasn't the usual, confident, rhythmic knock you get from someone who knows they belong. This was different. I walked slowly toward the door, my pulse starting to race. My breath came a little quicker, and I reached out to touch the door handle. But before I opened it, I hesitated. Who would be at the door this late? It wasn't even a neighbor or a friend. Was it her? Why hadn't she texted me again? My hand hovered over the handle for a few moments, my heart beating louder in my chest. And then, before I could even pull it open, the knock came again, louder this time. And this time, it was followed by something else. A voice. "Let me in," she said, muffled but frantic. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I stepped back from the door. Was she standing out there, at this hour, begging to come in? She had been working, right? What in the world was going on? My thoughts were jumbled, spinning like a tornado inside my head. I wasn't sure what I should do next. Open the door? Confront her about what I had texted? My mind was racing too fast for me to make a decision. But before I could even form a coherent thought, the knocking came again. This time, harder, desperate, as though someone was trying to break through the door. "Please, Nate," she said, her voice cracking. "Let me in. I need to explain." I could barely breathe. My fingers tingled with panic as I realized something was horribly wrong. I opened the door slowly, half expecting her to be standing there in a panic, but what I saw next was nothing like I expected. There was no explanation in the way she thought there would be. There was no calm apology, no reassurance. The truth was about to be so much darker than I could have ever imagined. The moment I opened the door, my heart sank. It wasn't her. Not in the way I expected. The person standing in front of me wasn't Margo. Instead, it was a stranger. A woman, probably in her late 20s, with wild, disheveled hair and wide, anxious eyes. Her clothes were a mess, as if she'd been running or hiding. I stood there, confused, not knowing what to say or how to react. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The woman seemed to hesitate for a moment before taking a step forward. She was breathing heavily, as if she had been running, and her hands were trembling. I'm sorry, she stammered, glancing behind her as if expecting someone to follow. I need help. You have to listen to me. I couldn't understand what was happening. My mind was still stuck on the text I had sent to Margo, the frantic knocking, and now this stranger at my door in the dead of night. I didn't know what to do, but something inside me told me to step back. I opened the door wider, allowing her to step inside. Maybe she was just someone in trouble. Maybe she was lost. But as soon as she crossed the threshold, the air seemed to change. There was an unsettling tension between us, a heavy silence that lingered like a storm on the horizon. I don't know what to say, she continued, still glancing nervously out the window. But you have to believe me. I don't want to cause trouble, but your wife, she's not who you think she is. The words hit me like a slap to the face. I didn't know how to react. My throat tightened, and I tried to speak, but no words came out. I thought I was hearing things. What do you mean? I finally managed to ask, my voice shaky. The woman looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and urgency. She took a deep breath before continuing. She's been seeing someone else. I'm involved in this in a way that I never wanted to be. But she asked me for help. She didn't tell you everything, did she? I felt a cold rush wash over me. The room spun, and I had to grab the back of the chair to steady myself. The words felt like poison in my ears. I had suspected something was wrong, but hearing it out loud, hearing it from a complete stranger, it was too much. The woman saw my reaction and quickly stepped back, as if she realized the weight of what she had just said. Look, I'm not here to cause problems, she said, her voice almost pleading. I thought you needed to know. Your wife's been keeping secrets. Big ones. My mind raced. I couldn't process everything she was saying. Was this a setup? Was she lying? But the panic in her eyes felt real, too real to ignore. My instincts were telling me that something was off with Margo. But this was more than I could have ever imagined. Why are you telling me this? I asked, still in disbelief. What do you want from me? I don't want anything from you. She replied quickly, almost too quickly. I need to make sure you understand what's going on. I didn't want to be involved in this, but when I found out what was happening, I couldn't just sit back and watch. I stared at her, trying to make sense of everything. There was no way I could know if she was telling the truth. But what if she was? What if this was the piece of the puzzle I had been missing all along? How do I know you're not just some crazy person trying to ruin my life? I asked, my voice trembling now. She paused, looking at me like she could see right through me. Then, without a word, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small, crumpled envelope. She handed it to me without a second glance. Look inside, she said quietly. You'll understand everything. I took the envelope hesitantly, the weight of it heavy in my hands. My fingers shook as I opened it, and inside was a single photo. I didn't even need to look closely to recognize the faces in the image. It was Margo, and a man I didn't know, standing far too close to her for comfort. They were in a hotel room, smiling, their hands almost touching. But the worst part? They were wearing matching wedding bands. The blood drained from my face as I stared at the picture. It felt like the room was closing in on me. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to process what I was looking at. The woman spoke again, her voice softer now. I'm sorry. I never wanted you to see this, but you need to know. She's been lying to you for months. And I don't know how much longer you can keep pretending everything's fine. I stood there, frozen. The photo burned in my hands, and my entire world seemed to shatter. Every doubt I had about Margo, every tiny whisper of suspicion, now had a face. And it wasn't hers. I dropped the photo on the table, and the woman took a step back, her face pale with regret. I know this isn't easy, she said quietly, but I couldn't let you live in the dark any longer. Before I could respond, she turned and walked out of the door, disappearing into the night like a ghost. I stood there for a long time, staring at the photo, my mind completely numb. How had I not seen this? How had I been so blind? The questions kept swirling around my head, each one more painful than the last. And I still didn't know what to do next. I stood there for what felt like hours, staring at the photo. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the fridge in the corner. My thoughts were racing, but they didn't seem to be making sense. Margo had been hiding something from me, something big, and I had no idea how deep this really went. I picked up the photo again, feeling my hands tremble as I examined it closely. The man in the photo looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. He was smiling, standing too close to Margo, his arm around her waist. I felt sick just looking at it. But what hurt the most was the wedding bands they were both wearing. How could she do this? How could she betray me like this? I dropped the photo onto the table, my head spinning. I needed to talk to her, confront her, but I couldn't bring myself to do it right away. I needed answers, and I needed them now. But the woman, the stranger, had left so suddenly. I couldn't even ask her more questions. What was I supposed to do? Where was I supposed to go from here? I sat down on the couch, running my hands through my hair. I had to think. I needed a plan. I grabbed my phone and tried to call Margo, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again, and again. Nothing. The frustration in my chest was building. How long had this been going on? How many nights had she come home late, pretending to work while she was with him? It wasn't just the affair that was eating away at me. It was the lies, the constant deceit, the fact that I had been living in a house with a woman who wasn't who I thought she was. My stomach churned as I realized how much of my life had been built on lies. I couldn't let this go. I needed to confront her, but I had to be smart about it. I decided to drive to the one place I knew she'd be, her favorite cafe. It was the only place she ever went when she needed space. I grabbed my jacket and left the house without a second thought. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but I knew that whatever happened next would change everything. The drive felt like it took forever, and the whole time, I couldn't stop thinking about what I had learned. The stranger's words echoed in my mind. She's been lying to you for months. It didn't make sense. Margo had always been the one who reassured me, the one who said we had a good life, that everything was fine. But now I saw her for what she really was. Or rather, who she wasn't. When I finally pulled into the parking lot of the cafe, my heart was pounding in my chest. I could already see her car parked out front, and a surge of panic hit me. Was she inside with him? Was this the moment I would catch them together? I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. My legs felt heavy, like they were made of stone, but I forced myself to walk toward the entrance. I didn't know what I was going to find, but I knew I couldn't turn back now. I pushed open the door to the cafe, and the familiar smell of coffee hit me like a wave. The place was mostly empty, just a few late-night regulars sitting at their usual tables. I scanned the room, my eyes searching for Margo. And there she was, sitting in the far corner, her back to me. But she wasn't alone. The man from the photo was sitting across from her, laughing at something she had said. And that was when everything inside me froze. My stomach twisted as I watched them. The way he leaned in too close. The way she smiled at him in a way that she had never smiled at me. I stood there, hidden behind a stack of chairs, just out of sight. My heart was hammering in my chest. I wanted to walk up to them, to confront them both, but I couldn't move. Not yet. The sight of them together was like a punch in the gut. I couldn't breathe. I had to get out of there. But before I turned to leave, I overheard something that stopped me dead in my tracks. "Are you sure he doesn't suspect anything?" the man asked, his voice low but clear. Margo's laugh was soft, almost soothing. But what she said next sent a chill down my spine. "I don't think so. He's too trusting. He believes everything I tell him." I could feel my blood run cold. Too trusting? Was she talking about me? Was that how she saw me? As someone so naive that I couldn't even see the lies right in front of my face. My knees buckled, and I had to lean against the wall to steady myself. Everything I thought I knew was falling apart. She had been playing me the whole time, and I had been too blind to see it. I felt like I was drowning in the weight of it all. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. Not when I was this close to the truth. I waited in the shadows, listening to their conversation. I needed to know how deep this went. How long had this been going on? How many lies had she told me? And then, just as I was about to walk up to them and demand answers, Margo stood up and hugged the man goodbye. She kissed him on the cheek, something she'd never done to me, and then she left the cafe. I stood there for a moment, staring at the empty seat where they had just been. My mind was reeling, and my hands shook as I pulled out my phone to call her again. This time, when she answered, there was no hesitation in my voice. No calm. Just the cold, hard truth. "We need to talk." The moment I dialed her number, I felt my pulse racing. My fingers were trembling as I held the phone to my ear, waiting for her to pick up. She had to know I was about to confront her, and there was no turning back now. She answered after the second ring. Her voice sounded the same, calm and collected, but I could hear the faint tension in her tone. "Hey, Nate. What's up?" I didn't waste any time. We need to talk, I said, my voice cold, almost mechanical. There was a brief pause, and then I heard her sigh. Not now, Nate. I'm really busy. Can we do this later? I wasn't going to let her push me away again. Not this time. No. Now. Where are you? I could hear her moving around on the other end of the line, probably trying to gather herself. I'm out, but I'm on my way home. Can we just? No, I cut her off. I'm not waiting anymore. I know what you've been doing. I could almost feel her freeze on the other side of the line. The air in my chest grew heavy, and I could tell she was processing my words. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice shaky now. I could feel the truth bubbling inside me, just waiting to spill out. I knew she wouldn't admit anything easily, but I wasn't going to let her lie anymore. I know about him, Margo, I said flatly. I saw the picture. I know everything. For a moment, there was silence, and then I heard her let out a small laugh. It wasn't the kind of laugh that made her sound relieved. It was cold and bitter. You have no idea what you're talking about, she said. My heart dropped. How could she lie so easily? After everything I had seen? Don't play dumb, I shot back. I saw you with him. At the cafe. I saw everything. Another long pause. I didn't want you to find out like this, she said quietly. Her voice was softer now, almost resigned. But I guess there's no way around it now. I gritted my teeth. So you admit it? She didn't answer right away, and that was enough of an answer for me. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach as I realized just how deep her betrayal went. You don't understand, she said, her voice barely a whisper. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my phone across the room and demand that she tell me everything right now. But I forced myself to stay calm. Then tell me, Margo. Tell me what's been going on, I said, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to stay composed. There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear her breathing, steady but strained. I didn't mean for it to get this far, she finally said. But after a while, it just felt like I couldn't stop. I couldn't get out of it. Out of what? I demanded. What are you talking about? I never wanted to hurt you, Nate, she continued. But I got involved with him, and it just happened. And then I couldn't pull away. I didn't know how. My stomach churned. I wanted to believe that she was sorry, that she felt some remorse for what she had done. But the more she spoke, the more it felt like she was trying to justify her actions, trying to paint herself as the victim. How long has this been going on? I asked, barely able to keep the tremor out of my voice. Months, she whispered. It's been months. And I'm so sorry, Nate. I never meant for you to find out like this. But I couldn't keep lying to you. I felt the ground beneath me shift, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. I thought I knew Margo. I thought I knew who she was. But everything had been a lie. Why? I managed to choke out. Why him? Why not just leave if you weren't happy with me? Because it wasn't about you, she said, her voice breaking. It was about me. I got lost in something I couldn't control. I thought it was just a mistake, that it was nothing. But then it became everything, and I didn't know how to stop. The words didn't feel like a confession. They felt like an excuse. Is he the reason you've been working late all those nights? I asked, my voice barely audible. Yes, she admitted, sounding exhausted. Yes, Nate. It's always been him. The weight of her words hit me like a freight train. I wanted to scream at her, to demand every single detail, to understand how she could do this to me. But I couldn't. I felt like I was drowning, and no matter how hard I tried to stay afloat, the reality of what she had done was pulling me under. I never wanted to hurt you, she repeated. I'm sorry. Sorry. It was the only word she seemed capable of saying, and it meant nothing to me. I can't do this anymore, Margo, I said, my voice cold. I can't keep living this lie. There was a long silence before she responded. I know, she whispered. I know. I hung up the phone without saying another word. The silence in the room felt suffocating. I felt like I had just lost everything. My trust, my marriage, my future. And I had no idea what to do next. The phone call ended, but the silence in my house was deafening. I sat there in the dark for what felt like hours, unable to move, unable to think clearly. The weight of Margot's words still hung in the air, and the sound of her voice echoed in my mind, replaying over and over again. I got lost in something I couldn't control. I didn't know what to do next. I had just learned the most gut-wrenching truth about my life, and I was alone with it. I stood up slowly, feeling like my legs could give out at any moment. The air felt thick, suffocating. I needed to breathe, to think, but every breath felt like it was being stolen from me. I walked over to the window and looked outside. The world seemed normal. People were still driving by, the streetlights casting soft shadows on the pavement. It was all so calm, so ordinary. But inside, everything had changed. I didn't know how to process the fact that Margo had been lying to me for so long. I couldn't understand how she could go from the woman I married to the person she was now. I never even suspected a thing. But now it was clear. Margo had crossed a line, and I was the last one to see it coming. It felt like everything we had built was nothing more than a facade. All the trust, all the moments we shared, they were nothing but illusions. I needed answers. But how could I get them? I didn't want to hear more excuses, more apologies. I wanted the truth, the raw, unfiltered version of everything she had kept hidden. I grabbed my jacket and walked out of the house, heading toward the one place I could think of, her studio. She always said it was her creative space, a place where she could work and be herself. It wasn't far from our house, just a few blocks away. But tonight, it felt like miles. When I reached the door, I hesitated. What was I going to say to her? Would I even be able to look her in the eye after everything she'd done? I knocked once, then twice. No answer. I knocked harder, this time with more urgency. Finally, the door creaked open, and there she stood. Margot's face was pale, her eyes red from crying. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. But I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. I need to know everything, Margo. No more lies. No more excuses. She stepped aside, letting me in, but there was no warmth in her gesture. She didn't offer me a seat or any words of comfort. Instead, she stood there, waiting. I never wanted it to happen like this, she began. I didn't plan for it, but it did, and now everything is a mess. I clenched my fists. Stop talking in circles, I snapped. I want the truth, the whole truth. Margo looked down, as if she couldn't bear to meet my gaze. It started with him. He was just a client, a project. But it turned into something more. I don't even know how it happened. It just did. I felt my breath catch in my throat. A client. She had let this go on for months, and it had all started with something so trivial, so innocent. But now it was more than just a betrayal. It was a complete destruction of everything I thought we had. You used me, Margo, I said quietly, my voice breaking. You lied to my face. You used every excuse in the book. And for what? For him? She closed her eyes, her hands trembling. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. But I never meant to hurt you. I swear. I never wanted to destroy everything we had. I shook my head, unable to hold back the anger that was rising inside me. Then why didn't you just leave? Why didn't you tell me the truth when it all started? Instead, you kept lying and sneaking around behind my back. I couldn't, she whispered. I didn't know how to let go. He made me feel things I hadn't felt in so long. I felt alive when I was with him. And with you, it was just empty. I didn't know how to come back from that. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight, as if the air had been sucked out of the room. All this time, I had thought we were building something together, but she had been slipping away in secret, piece by piece. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You've destroyed everything we were. And for what? A fling? A momentary escape? She stepped forward, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away. Please, Nate, don't leave me like this. The look in her eyes was full of desperation, but it didn't move me. I had already made up my mind. There was no going back. I can't fix this, I said, shaking my head. I don't even know who you are anymore. And with that, I turned and walked out of her studio, leaving her standing there in the silence of the night, the weight of her lies still hanging in the air. I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I knew one thing for sure. Whatever happened, I couldn't go back to the way things were. I walked away from Margo's studio without looking back. My mind was in chaos, each thought crashing into the next, trying to make sense of everything. How had we ended up here? I had trusted her. I had loved her. And now it all felt like a distant memory. A lie. The night air was cold as I made my way back home, but I barely noticed it. My mind was running 1,000 miles per hour. The image of Margo and that man, the truth she'd finally admitted to, it all weighed on me like a ton of bricks. I couldn't escape the feeling of betrayal, the sting of knowing that everything I thought I knew about my life had been twisted into something unrecognizable. I reached the front door and stopped for a moment. I stood there, my hand hovering over the doorknob, wondering if I was ready to face the emptiness inside. I wanted to be angry, but I was too tired. Angry at Margo, angry at myself, angry at the life we had built that now felt so hollow. I opened the door and stepped inside. The house was quiet, too quiet. It felt like a shell of what it used to be. The pictures on the wall, the little things that made it feel like home, all seemed distant now. I couldn't look at them without seeing the lies. I sat down on the couch, still reeling. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a message from Margo. "I'm sorry, Nate. I know I've messed up. But please, I need you to understand this isn't just about him. It's about me. I was lost. I didn't know how to fix it." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the reply button. The urge to respond was there, but I didn't want to. There were no words left for her. Nothing she could say would undo what had happened. I set the phone down and looked around the room. Everything felt different now, as if everything I thought I knew was shattered beyond repair. The truth was, I didn't know what to do next. I couldn't stay in this house. I couldn't stay with Margo. But I also wasn't sure I was ready to let go. I had to make a decision. Was I going to stay and try to fix this, despite everything? Or was I finally going to walk away and let the pieces fall where they may? The decision felt impossible. But I knew one thing. I couldn't stay in the middle of this chaos forever. Something had to change. I picked up my phone again, and for the first time that night, I typed a reply. "I don't know what to say anymore. I need space. I need time to think." I hit send, then put the phone down. I wasn't sure if it was the right decision, but it felt like the only one I could make. Time would tell whether or not it was too late to fix anything. But for now, I had to walk away. From her. From the lies. From everything. The next few days passed in a blur. I spent most of my time pacing the house, unable to sit still. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. My mind wouldn't let go of the images, the photo of Margo with him, the whispered confessions, the lies that had piled up over time. Every moment felt like I was drowning in uncertainty. I couldn't bring myself to talk to her. Not yet. The space I had asked for was more than just physical. It was a mental and emotional distance I desperately needed. I had no idea what I was supposed to do, but I couldn't keep living in the same house, pretending everything was fine. One afternoon, I found myself in the attic, sorting through old boxes of things we had accumulated over the years. It wasn't something I usually did, but for some reason, I felt compelled to go through them now. I opened a box marked memories, photos, old birthday cards, keepsakes from our vacations, and started sifting through it, each item pulling me deeper into the past. It felt strange, looking at our lives through the lens of these objects. These were the things that used to bring me comfort. But now, they felt like ghosts of a life I no longer recognized. At the bottom of the box, I found something I wasn't expecting, a letter. It was addressed to me in Margo's handwriting. I hadn't seen it before, and the handwriting seemed different, hesitant, almost. I unfolded the letter, my hands shaking. "Nate," it began, "I don't know how to begin this, but I feel like I owe you an explanation, even if it's too late to fix anything. I've been hiding things from you. I've lied to you. I've deceived you, and I am so sorry for that. I never wanted to hurt you. When I first met him, it was innocent. It was just work. But over time, it became something else. Something I couldn't control." I stopped reading for a moment. My heart was racing. I had no idea why Margo had written this letter or when, but I felt a mix of anger and curiosity. Was this her final attempt to explain? Or was this just another excuse? I continued. "You've always been good to me, Nate. You've always given me everything I needed, and I took that for granted. I got lost in the excitement, the thrill of something new, something that made me feel alive again. But I didn't think about the damage I was causing. I didn't think about you. And now I don't know how to fix it." I felt my throat tighten as I read her words. There was no denying it. She was taking responsibility, but was it enough? Could I ever forgive her? I know I've destroyed everything between us. I can never undo the hurt I've caused. But I want you to know that I never meant for any of this to happen. I've made mistakes, and I've hurt you more than I could ever say. I'm sorry. I love you, and I always will. But I understand if you can't forgive me. The letter ended there, and I sat still for a long time, the paper crumpled in my hands. The emotions swirling inside me were overwhelming. Was this genuine? Was she really sorry? Or was this just another attempt to keep me in her life? I didn't know anymore. I stood up, pacing the attic, trying to clear my head. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape the truth of what I had just read. I had spent so much time trying to understand why she had done this. Why had she lied to me for so long? Why had she allowed it to go this far? But the reality was, Margo was no longer the person I had married. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't the same person either. I wasn't the man who could forgive and forget. I wasn't the man who could just move on from something like this. But I was also the man who didn't want to lose everything. I stood there in the silence of the attic, holding the letter. I didn't know what to do next. Should I call her? Should I confront her? Or was it time to finally walk away, to let go of the person I once thought I knew? I didn't have the answers. But I knew one thing. I couldn't keep living in limbo. I had to make a choice. And whatever choice I made, it would change everything. Days passed in a haze of uncertainty. I spent more time outside, walking aimlessly around the neighborhood, trying to clear my mind. The letter sat on my desk, unread for hours at a time, but always pulling me back in. Each time I read it, I felt the same mixture of hurt and longing. Margo's words seemed genuine, perhaps too genuine, but it didn't change the fact that she had betrayed me. I was standing at a crossroads, uncertain of which path to take. My heart wanted to believe that people could change, that love could heal the deepest wounds. But my mind kept reminding me of the damage that had been done. Trust, once broken, is difficult to rebuild. I had to ask myself if I was willing to take that risk. One afternoon, Margo called. I saw her name light up on my phone, and for a moment, I hesitated. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal, all of it was still fresh. But then, I remembered the letter. I remembered the raw honesty in her words. I answered. "Hey," I said, my voice steady but unsure. "I know we haven't talked in days," Margo began, her voice soft. "And I know I've hurt you more than I can ever explain. But I don't want to lose you, Nate. I need to make things right. Please, can we talk?" I closed my eyes for a moment, taking in her words. I could feel the sincerity in her voice, the desperation. But more than anything, I realized I wasn't ready to throw everything away. I didn't want to live with regret, wondering if there was a chance for us to fix things. "I don't know if I can forgive you right away," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to take that first step, Margo. We've been through too much together to just walk away without at least trying to make it right." There was silence on the other end, and then I heard her take a deep breath. "I don't deserve that, but thank you," she whispered. "I'll do whatever it takes to show you I'm sorry." I stood by my decision, taking things one step at a time. It wasn't going to be easy. Trust is something that takes time to rebuild. But as I walked into our home later that day, Margo was sitting on the couch, waiting for me. The look on her face, a mixture of relief and uncertainty, made me realize that we were both at the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter that would require effort from both of us, but one that could lead to healing. We talked for hours. We cried. We apologized. And we began to open up to each other in ways we never had before. The conversation was hard, and there were moments of pain, but there was also something else: hope. I didn't have all the answers, and I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was willing to fight for us, to rebuild what had been broken. And for Margo, she was ready to do the same. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't help but feel a small spark of optimism. Maybe we couldn't go back to who we were, but we could create something new. And that was enough. Because sometimes, even after the deepest betrayal, there's still room for redemption. And as long as we were both committed, maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. In the end, we both learned that love isn't just about the good times. It's about showing up when things are tough, taking responsibility for your mistakes, and being willing to try again. That's what we did. And as we started rebuilding our relationship, we knew it wasn't going to be easy, but we were willing to try. Together.